Thank you all for your patience and your time, and most of all your commitment and volunteerism to participate in what is about to occur. The University of Massachusetts Climate Control Simulation. Overall, this is a simulation designed to encourage students raising their level of awareness regarding climate control as it relates to our country, as it relates to other countries, as it relates to us as individuals within the world. It's a world situation that we are all concerned about. And so you will be, as other students before you have done across the nation, be participating in a simulation to which they have, that's the University of Massachusetts, has already planned and designed for us to do. So we're using that model. You will be listening to Melvina Amos, who is one of the facilitators, as myself, in making sure that you are aware and understanding what your responsibilities and duties are. We have 4 other facilitators that are with us. We have Lee Dogomani, who is with Life Plant Sciences. We have Andy Wagner, who is honors coordinator, but also professor in sociology. We have Scott Gabehart, excuse me. Scott, I always want to call him Gabehart. Scott Gabehart, who is with STEM. And he's really STEM here at Merrimack, so maybe district-wide?
Sure.
So he's the district professor, Dr. Scott Gabehart. I know I keep saying that wrong. And then we have Renee Thomas-Woods, who also is joining us, and she is mass communications. She's a professor, associate professor, assistant professor, associate professor, and soon to have her doctorates in June of next year. So for those people that continue to climb the run. In the meantime, we have all of you, the most important people. Our videographer is a student, Anna. She's in Mass Comm. She works at the radio station and the TV station on campus. So that's who will be recording what we do. All of this information is being sent to University of Massachusetts for their further, for their analytics.
So, you know I'm Melvina. If you have any questions, ask anybody but me. I know I'm the presenter, but yeah, just ask anybody but me. I'll do my best to answer the question. So we're getting ready to get started. We need 6 groups. So we're going to count it down, 1 through 6. So you will craft a short speech in which you explain your policy decisions to the full group. So yes, there will be a short speech. I believe it's about 2 minutes, and it doesn't take long. But you'll be comfortable because you'll have the rest of your group to come together and make this speech together. So evaluate the impacts of your proposed policies on stopping the worst impacts of climate change. Negotiations round 2 and more, but again, it's just 2 rounds. We'll do it all over again, and then we'll debrief at the end.
Students were given a time to plan within their groups and allocate the resources they have, as well as address any shortcomings that their nations or groups have in reaching the climate goals. Their discussions focus on when their group believes it will hit peak emissions, how long it will take for their plans to begin a reduction in emissions, and the annual percentage of those reductions. They will also decide on other factors, such as halting deforestation and beginning afforestation. These actions will have nearly as profound an effect on climate change as the reductions in greenhouse gas emissions. Once they have their plans together, they begin to negotiate with the other groups in hopes of reaching a solution that is not only beneficial to their nation or group, but also benefits the world as a whole. Some negotiations revolve around money, some around resources, and some deal with technology and tariffs. All nations want to get the best deal for their people, but will that strategy work out in favor of the world as a whole?
So you can only take from your country.
All countries have some resources, but many nations or groups have different amounts of resources and may only have one type. Other nations have greater amounts of resources and a wider variety as well. This was represented by the snack types and amounts allocated for each group. How will this visual representation of resources affect how they negotiate with each other?
No, we're the other, we're the, okay, right here, say China and other developed. Three-bagged president. Yeah.
Well, let me ask this. What is one of the things you all, like, I guess, what are some of y'all real strengths right now? You guys, what area are you guys looking for?
We have a lot of resources, land, and people.
The European Union has also discovered that China, being one of the main outsources of our bovine that comes primarily from France, Germany, and Spain, we would respectfully ask China to decrease the importation of animals from our country to your country and find a plant-based source to feed China's people. This will greatly reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. What do you think about that, China?
We can try to work on that.
We can probably work on that. We can probably work on that. But part of what we are working on is reducing our deforestation and land degradation. So we're trying to reduce our emissions also by lowering what we have found is one of our largest sources as far as the emissions of greenhouse gases are from the fact that we previously used an awful lot of the non-renewable fuels.
All right, we ready? All right, group 6.
Okay, so we are the developing nations. Well, other developing nations, which includes Africa, Central and South America, South and Southeast Asia, most of the Middle East, and the islands, nations of the Pacific, Indian Ocean, and the Caribbean. And we are proposing, first of all, knowing that the goal is to reduce carbon emissions, we are seeking to increase reforestation in our countries. And the way that we propose to do that is we entered into a negotiation with the United States. And because the United States is concerned about their image right now, they are very much concerned about their public relations image. So we explained to them about our concerns about our livelihood and that some of the concerns that we have about people who are not eating. So we wanted to find a way to get enough money to support our efforts. So we negotiated with them that we would get $45 billion a year from them in order to support our initiatives, which is to pour into our agriculture so that we can both grow food for our countrymen and we can continue to grow trees. So we wanted to have enough money for us to support those initiatives moving forward. So we were able to secure that, and we're pretty happy about that because in return, they'll start reestablishing their image because right now they're looking pretty sad. So.
Wonderful. Hold on one second.
Thank you for your presentation. Now, before you go, the 3 major questions that you needed to answer have to be designated by, people on the screen up there will identify the percentage that, because this will help you see and understand the impact that this country, these countries are making on the situation based upon their collaboration. So, Scott, can you come up and take a look at this for us? We're starting with the other developing countries down at the bottom in the blue. Okay. Okay.
All right, so the information that I need from your group is what year do you plan to have peak emissions and what year do you expect the reduction to begin? Right.
Well, we said we're
Next 5 years, all right, 2023.
Say that louder so that rest.
2023 for the emission peak year.
Louder, that means.
And what year do you expect your reductions to begin to go down?
2024.
That's somewhat unrealistic.
It has to be 20, from down to 23.
Think about how long it takes a tree to grow. 10 years, all right.
So we're going to give it 10 years for the reductions to begin until 2033.
Fantastic, thank you.
Okay, and there's.
What? Oh, I have to do more.
Yeah, they're across the top. Next question.
Prevent deforestation, we are going to do that.
They identified that they will be extending their project, what they plan to do over the next 10 years, utilizing in their mind concept that it's about 10 years for a tree to grow. So if they want to now replenish the trees that have been taken from their areas, they'll need over 10 years, or 10 years for that to be seen. That's question one. Now, what was the next question? So, the next question was that you didn't have an answer. What was the next question?
Oh, they're finished.
Yeah.
No,
Everything is good.
well then, they didn't, we don't know it, so let's hear it again. So if it's 2023.
Okay, so for the emission peak year for the other developing countries, we said it would be at 2023. Reductions would begin in the year of 2033, giving the trees enough time to fully grow and mature. The annual reduction rate would be 5%, and then the prevent deforestation would be 100%, and to promote afforestation,
Yeah.
afforestation is 100%.
Very good, okay. Everybody else now has that model in mind as to what you're going to be doing as you present. You must have this information and they'll plug it in.
I'm down. My biologist is happy.
Hello, party people. How's it hanging? Y'all are here, you know, for climate stuff and everything, so let's say about climate stuff. Those metrics up on the board. We are the other developed nations. We're a whole group of people, all over the place. Canada, Australia, Japan, New Zealand, Russia, the former Soviet Union Republic, South Korea, all those people. You heard most of that. Anyway, so our plan is to contribute $50 billion to the fund, the Green Climate Fund. We're committed to reducing our annual CO2 emissions by 2% annually over the next 20 years past our peak. And let's see, what's another one again? And we are committing to reduce forestation, or reduce deforestation in our area at 100%. Very committed to that part.
Have them say it again so that we can plug in there.
All right, and we're making investments into the developing nations for infrastructure regarding clean energy technology and job formation through these industries, as well as a deal with China on China part of that amount we're putting into the fund is on behalf of China. 20 billion of that is. Oh yeah. Well, we already mentioned those. Yeah. We're also committed to making solar panels to create jobs and green energy, use sun, like we're 2030 is our peak. Over 20 years, yeah. Annual 2% over 20 years. Yeah. I think that covers it.
Would you repeat it one more
No,
time?
we're-
Clear.
Okay, so yeah, as we stated, our goals involve reducing in 2050 annual rate of 2%, deforestation forest preservation 100%, and promoting afforestation 100%. And our peak emission year is 2030.
Thank you, Group 5, which was other developed nations. Good job.
The last person that needs money.
All right, y'all see this chicken scratch right here? Today we're gonna talk to you guys about India. We pretty much did what you guys, read the article, and these are what we came up with. Actions to reduce carbon emissions, if any. Without action, Indians' emissions are expected to grow significant by 2100. You can decide when your emissions will stop growing, when they will be beginning to decline, at what annual emissions decline, if at all. We decided we would say yes. We will help standard living for the people. We would not pay for the price for their past emissions. The reason why we won't pay is because of the high amount to eliminate poverty. The United States have 6 tons more CO2 per year, and India only have 2 tons per year. Typically, we want enough money to create jobs and other facilities for our community. We wanted to reduce deforestation, and that's our action to reduce carbon emissions. The GP per person in the United States is more than 7.5, and in India it's only 3.5 times, which is more than us anyway. We want to overcome the poverty. We want to enforce and to negotiate with Europe for funding programs for our poverty. So we want Europe to help us, instead of us taking all this money and putting it in one place, we want other resources to help us as well. We wanted to reduce emissions by 2030. And we also said that this would reduce deforestation by the end of 2019. We will be going to ask for $10 billion from other countries for this contribute to the countries that we may think about producing.
So basically, we are 100% going to reduce deforestation for the CO2, and we asked for $10 billion from developed countries to help us with that, because our main priority is poverty. We want to help everyday life. We know we don't produce the most emissions, so we're not going to pay for that cost that other countries have done.
So what's your annual reduction rate?
Annual reduction rate would be GDP or GDP? Or you just talking about the annual rate for the country?
about the deforestation.
I think that's what he was talking about when he said that multiplier. Is that what you meant to do? Another thing to add, we are 1.9% in deficit for the emissions. We would have increased our carbon-free power capacity by 30% to 40% by 2030. So that's a good thing with like a 10% difference. Pretty much, we try to work as hard as anyone else.
Good job.
Hello there, we are China, and we are currently the world's second largest economy, and we are also by 2030 projected to be the largest emitters of CO2. And so we are aware of that, and which is why China has, in the last 20 years, has taken steps to mitigate that through our aggressive renewable resources technology, as well as manufacturing of solar panels, turbines, etc. And so we also, we're very, we want to keep our right to develop. And so we are in fear that the developed nations may overburden us with an issue that the developed nations have created since the Industrial Revolution. Since we are still a developing country, we feel that we shouldn't bear the burden of the majority of the Green Climate Fund. So with that in mind, we have agreed, we have negotiated with the United States, and we have decided that after we reach our peak CO2 emissions in 2030, we are going to reduce them by 3% annually. And in lieu of that, the United States has agreed to fund $40 billion of the $100 billion budget for the fund, the Green Climate Fund. And with the developed nations, we have also negotiated $20 billion from them to help fund the budget. And in exchange, we are going to share our renewable technologies that we are creating now and will continue to develop, as well as to lower import tariffs from those countries within our own borders. And we will also be more, I guess, generous with our rare heavy metals in the world market. And this is all in exchange for continuing our decline of CO2 emissions.
And we intend to work on reducing our deforestation and starting, well, 2030 by 50%, and increase afforestation or reforestation by 100% by 2020. Okay. The other thing that we are in negotiation with the European Union to reduce the amount of animal protein products that we import from them, because the fact that they produce all of that, they say is a burden on their CO2 emissions, and we'd like to help them with that, in exchange also with some technological sharing of technology for renewable energy and things along that line. So let's see.
So that's current negotiations.
Yeah, that's we haven't come to an actual agreement on that, but we are working on that. Let's see. And although we will be the largest producer of CO2 emissions, we will lower per person because of the size of our population than a lot of other nations that are involved in this. So that was just basically, we're trying to protect ourselves so that we can still become the developing nation that we could be. And that's about it.
Okay, so what's your reduction? What year does your reduction begin?
So we're projected to reach our peak. We're projected to reach our peak in 2030. And we'll be the largest emitters. But we will. We have, I guess, pledged to reduce it by 3% annually, starting in 2031. Will be the first year.
So you guys, so for China, the emissions peak year is 2030. The reductions begin in 2031. Oh, I'm sorry, you said 3% for your annual reduction rate? The annual reduction rate is 3%. Prevent deforestation is 50%, and promote afforestation is 100%.
Yes.
Let's give China a hand.
Is that the result?
Yes, 2.4. All right, good job, China.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Duke such and such and such and such, and I represent the European Union. Today, we are in negotiations.
You gotta give us the mic now.
Today, we are in negotiations. We would like to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions by 15% by the year 2030. How do we get this done? One major way we can get this done. We were talking to our good country, China, over there. And we have decided that we cannot produce no more cows. We have no more room for cows. We have more cows than cars. We cannot produce no more cars for China to feed its people. So what we offer is this. China has some technology that we would like to get our hands on for electric transportation. If we can overhaul our transportation system by 2030, this will reduce our emissions by 24% here. What are we offering? What are we offering? We're offering money, let's face it. European Union, we have money. We're offering money. $80 billion per year in aid. Resources for infrastructure of developing countries. We will build government buildings, hospitals, schools, roads. We'll even offer military protection for those countries. In exchange for some of our great bioagriculture technology that we have our hands on. What developing country could not use this? The only thing that we would like in return, we need access to wind turbines. We've offered some of our land. China has gave a great deal, say they'll build the turbines and we just harvest the energy from them. We'll talk about that later. But we need wind turbine energy. If we can get wind turbine, if we can get electric cars, and we can stop producing so many cows, we can reduce our emissions by 15% by the year 2030. We have money, European Union has spoken. What year we're going to spike up with emissions?
What happened to that action, bro?
The European Union, we're already past emission spikes. Our emissions have already spiked in Europe. We have more cows in our country than we do cars. I'll show you. One cow produces 2,300 kilograms of CO2 per year. If you add the number of cows, that's 4 tons per year that our cows are producing. Cars only produce 2.7 tons of CO2 per year. We have to reduce our cows.
When was your peak year? When did it start?
When did this start for you?
When will you start seeing a decrease in your emissions?
We will start seeing a decrease by the year 2030.
I have that. Emissions peak year, like the beginning.
When did this start? Let's give it the date of 19-something, 70-something.
2019.
2019 it is.
And what was your increase?
$80 billion we're offering.
What was your annual reduction rate? Is it 15%?
15%. And at $80 billion per year, we're offering an annual aid.
You prevent deforestation, is that 100%?
We don't have any more trees left in here. We have money. Because we cut all the trees and made them out of money, huh? We don't have any more trees in here. We don't have any deforestation program.
Zero, zero. Okay, you did a wonderful job.
Thank you, thank you.
Oh, this was all worth it, yes. Accent and all, it was all worth it. Let's give the European Union another hand. They did a great job.
I'm Batman with the United States. United States of America, and our goal was to seek a global agreement to reduce greenhouse gas emissions that achieves the best outcome for our economy and that national interest as well as for the world.
All right, so I know no one's really a fan of the United States right now. We're doing our best. Okay, so first, for the plan in America, what we're working on is we're moving away from fossil fuels and coal. We're going to be starting just solely working on solar, wind, and water energy. And we're going to be getting these resources from China. In return, we're giving them $40 billion to put towards the Green Fund. And they're also doing low tariffs for us as well. We're also going to in place, I'm sorry guys, I got nervous. Okay, we're also putting in mandatory recycling. So you're going to see those little green recycling bins in every house, and also they're going to be mandatory for apartment buildings as well. We're not working on necessarily afforestation, but we're going to stop deforestation by 100%. We're working on creating more national forests and national parks that are going to be protected. Some more wildlife protection as well. Also, we're going to increase taxes on gas-guzzling vehicles, and we're going to have no tax on electrical cars and low taxes on hybrid vehicles as well. Also, we're working towards saving the world's wildlife. So for the developing countries, we gave them $45 billion. In return, they're going to be focusing on their afforestation and their agriculture as well, and they're also going to work on protecting wildlife as well and helping prevent the poaching. So we're 100% committed to deforestation. We're not focused on afforestation in America, but we're helping afforestation in other countries. Our peak year should be 2028, and we're expecting to see a reduction by 2038. We're hoping to see a range of 3%. Also in future, we're probably going to try to work moving away from cattle and focus more on encouraging a plant-based diet. Yeah!
Livestock. No more cows.
Well, also it'd be healthier for everyone in the country as well too, by focusing more on eating greens. So yeah, all right, thank you.
Great job, everyone! So the United States brought it all home. I have to admit, I was a little leery about the United States. I know how we can be. But they brought it all home. So now you guys have succeeded. The goal was to get down to 2, and you guys did. All together. Working together.
All right, guys, so I just wanted to kind of do a little bit more wrap up in terms of the climate science. So I was introduced earlier as the STEM professor. In reality, I am a biology professor. I've been doing a lot of reading into climate change, and I talk about it in my classes a lot. So I just wanted to kind of do a little wrap up here and pick out a few things that I heard specifically that made me think about other things. So we mentioned the reduction in growing and making more cows for more beef. This is one of the single biggest things we can do to save our planet. And I know some of y'all might think, I really want my steak and my burger. I'm allergic to beef, so I don't care. But there's other options, okay? Because not only are we contributing carbon dioxide, but we're also contributing methane, which is another huge, major greenhouse gas. So good job, European Union. But when you reduce the number of cows, you also make more land available. So something you could have done was afforestation and replant trees. See, so there you go. You're on the right path. So we have a lot of opportunities here. One of the biggest things that this study doesn't do is look at the world's oceans. And that's one of the things that I wanted to just spend our wrap-up talking about. How many of you have heard of the Great Barrier Reef? Good, that's what I hope to see. How many of you heard what's happened to the Great Barrier Reef? Okay, if you haven't, Google it, okay? The Great Barrier Reef is 97% dead. Dead, okay? What the carbon dioxide does, our oceans are a sink for carbon, which means they can absorb carbon dioxide. When we absorb carbon dioxide in our ocean, it lowers what's called the pH level, which is the level of being acid or base. So pure water, for example, is 7, which is neutral. Okay, your stomach acid is around a pH of 2, and that helps with your digestion. So what happens is, we absorb carbon dioxide into our oceans, the pH drops and becomes more acidic, and the corals themselves, it's an animal that works with an algae to get food. The algae leaves the coral dies instantly. So that's what coral bleaching is doing, is increased carbon dioxide means lower ocean pH, which means that the corals die, but the corals sustain all of those other animals that live in the reef. So while this is a really great tool, and we're seeing just how all of your incredible negotiations worked, we also have to think about our oceans, how we're interacting with each other, where we're getting our food from. And while, China was all like, we're gonna keep stuff for ourselves too, guess what, China? That's not gonna work for forever, okay? So crack a history book and look at protectionism in the United States, okay? So we have to think about, like, yes, we need to develop our own people, but we also, this is a global effort, and I think you all did a great job of demonstrating exactly how these negotiations should work and how we can all come together, because we're at 8 billion people on this planet right now, and quite frankly, we passed our capacity about 4 billion people ago. So if we're going to maintain human population, maintain cultures, and keep embracing everyone, we really need to think about our planet some more. Thank you all for listening to me badger you about planet.